Andrea Tessman, I have a question for you.
Oh, what would that be, Kirk Buchner?
And this one I can ask because I might know the answer. On June, well, I could be wrong, but I think this is where our age difference is going to play an interesting part on our perspective on this song. On June 9th, 1990, what were you doing?
Well, I would have been 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was living in Fort Nelson at the time. And I seem to remember when this song was out and popular, doing a lot of roller skating at the roller rink, which was also the hockey rink.
Okay.
But not in the summer. But I may have been in school, because I don't know what day of the week June 9th was.
It'd be a Saturday.
Well then, yeah. I was either building tree forts or I do roller skating to this very song.
Okay. I thought it might be song appropriate for you. As for me, I would have been 18 and not giving a shit about this particular song. But in other world news, if you were going to the movies, you would have been checking out Another 48 Hours, which was the #1 film in the box office. A not very good sequel by Eddie Murphy, but nevertheless, he kind of needed it. He was in the midst of a mini slump. And if you were following tennis, this makes me feel so old. So Monica Seles defeated Steffi Graf in the French Open. That was 30 years ago. Jesus. I guess they're both over 50. That's kind of creeping me out. But if you were listening to the radio, and it sounds like you were via roller skates, you were listening to Wilson Phillips and their first #1 hit, Hold On. And I think that's where an 18-year-old male and a 9-year-old female would have completely different musical tastes. Am I correct in assuming that this might have been one of those first songs for you that you really sort of like got into? Because this sort of has this little tween female feel to it to me.
Yeah, it was definitely one that I remember from my childhood as being something. I was also at the time really into like Paula Abdul and things like that. So yeah, this fits in with that category.
Okay.
Debbie Gibson, you know.
Yep. Debbie Gibson, Tiffany, and I guess Robin Sparkle. Let's all go to the mall. Yeah. You got that. You got that reference. I love it. I did. That's actually not the first time that Robin Sparkle has come up on a Kirk Buchner podcast.
Really?
Really. Which you can listen to on the Hall of Fame show, also here broadcast on the Kirk Buchner network of shows. Wilson Phillips. I heard about the story right from when they first came out, and it's as impressive today as it was then. You can't come up with 3 women who were meant to sort of do songs in harmony than these 3.
No, their voices match perfectly together. They're very musically talented, and they just have the perfect tone to sing together.
Well, and it's also the pedigree.
Well, that too.
I mean, 2 daughters of Brian Wilson, considered then and considered even more so now to be possibly, if you were to look at American musical geniuses in the last 70 years, or just say the rock era, Brian Wilson's in that top 10, maybe top 5. And a master of harmony. And then you look, and so like that, and his 2 daughters, Carney and Wendy, of that group, the Wilson of the Wilson Phillips. And then China Phillips, the daughter of John Phillips. Jesus, we're going to get into him. Holy crap.
Oh, that was a rabbit hole for sure.
Oh, yeah. And John liked to explore his other daughter's rabbit hole, as we'll get into. But the mamas and the papas, but not just John and Michelle Phillips. So another 60s group that mastered harmony. So that's 3 rock and roll Hall of Famers. And then the 4th parent was in a girl group too. Brian's wife of a California surf group that didn't do particularly well because I guess if you're an all-surf girl group, that wasn't going to really fly if we want to sort of like play the whole misogynistic card. But nevertheless, that's sort of where we have. I mean, how do you not learn how to harmonize if you're these three who were childhood friends, and by their early 20s, they use their leverage. Now, I'd say nowadays, and maybe because I keep going down we'll talk about rabbit holes, I read far too much about social justice, some of it valid, some of it not so valid. Guaranteed if Wilson Phillips came out, there would be a social justice warrior complaining about their white privilege.
Oh, absolutely. I think that they did a pretty decent job of sure, they had connections and they pulled some strings, but they didn't have anything just handed to them. It was like, oh, you guys sound good together, so we'll just throw you in a studio and you can put out an album. Like, they actually worked at it and wrote songs for a while before anyone actually produced their music professionally.
Well, the opportunity was easily handed to them, but they hit it out of the park.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, but before that, from what I could tell, maybe you found different stuff than I did. I didn't find a whole lot from Carney and Wendy prior to this. As I mentioned at the end of last week's show, I remember China, and that was more after the fact, because she was, I think, the fifth lead in Caddyshack 2, a horrible film, but yet I've seen it cajillion times, because it just was always on the Canadian version of HBO back when they showed movies all the time, and it always seemed to be Caddyshack. Sorry about that. And then, sure, and that's when also she had I didn't recognize her then at the time because she just had the longer hair, played an uptight elite snob. I think the character name was Miffy or Muffy, I forget. Doesn't really matter. But also too, she was in a film I don't remember her in this. Some Kind of Wonderful.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, starring Eric Stoltz, and believe it or not, this will sort of tie back into the end when I unveil next week's show's topic.
Ooh.
Yeah. Not so much Eric Stoltz, but peripherally. It'll make sense.
But no, I think it seems like, so they grew up with very famous, very talented parents. Mm-hmm. They parted ways in high school, and then later on, in their later teens, got back together, and was because I think China had an offer to do some sort of Children of Famous Parents compilation album thing. So that's how they kind of really started harmonizing and singing together. Again, because they had done it when they were kids. And then, yeah, I mean, there's much more, I think, on China than on the Wilson sisters, but it appears that they wrote this song about China's drug addiction.
Did you know that before?
I'd heard it somewhere, but I did not really. I always kind of figured it was about broken relationships and whatnot. But then, and reading, I know you should never read the comments on things, but I enjoy scrolling through some of the comments on the YouTube videos, and that seemed to be the general consensus, as people were saying, oh, it's about heartbreak and breaking up, and you just gotta... But if you really listen to the lyrics, it's, they're saying you did this to yourself, like, just hold on, things will get better, but, don't blame anyone else and get yourself out of your own shit.
And it's a great message, regardless of how you interpret it.
Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense that she was writing, and she apparently was basically looking at like her AA material or something, and it basically was just this hokey, like just hold on for another day and you'll get through it, and she's like, oh, this song's going to be super hokey, but apparently people loved it.
Yeah,
myself included.
The critics, not so much, but, that's okay. You don't necessarily make songs for the critics, and if you do, chances are it's going to be bad anyway. Because a lot of the critical thing, bashing of this song in particular was that, and it was vapid and it couldn't have come on from anything. And I think maybe that's because they didn't know what they were singing about. Because if you're looking at three, well, let's just call it what it is, three white women of privilege who are 21, what are they really complaining about? And in some ways, you can sort of argue that, well, they shouldn't have. China being a drug addict before she's 20, that's not uncommon for young Hollywood, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, and that's, so their second album, which kind of tanked, is much more somber and introspective in a lot of ways. And that they apparently all ended up going into therapy because they were so stressed out and everything. And then like all this childhood trauma about, being the children of essentially some of the biggest pop stars of the time who were also raging alcoholics and druggies.
And that's the good things.
In one of the things I read that, John Phillips was like literally kicked out of some of the biggest rock stars' parties for being too wild.
Yeah, imagine that.
Steven Tyler, I think, was one of them. Like, how do you be too wild for Steven Tyler's party?
It's sort of like Elton John going to a San Francisco club and saying, "You know what, this is too gay."
Did you see the interview where Elton John had put the older Wilson sister.
Which one's older, Wendy or Carney? I'm not even sure.
Carney's the older one. So Elton John had put Carney to sleep one day, and they're like, how did that happen? So, well, apparently he came over trying to convince their mom to sell him the piano, like Brian Wilson's piano, and Carney wandered down the stairs, so Elton John put her back to bed, and then their mom refused to the piano.
I didn't read that. I didn't learn that. That
was on one of the interviews with them. I think it was maybe, I can't remember when.
That's a douche
from a while ago.
That's a douche move by Elton.
To try to buy the piano?
Well, yeah, because knowing that Brian's a mess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we should go back to these parents. Oh, sorry, I interrupted you. I think you were going to go somewhere.
Oh, no, I was going to say, at one point he put the piano in a sandbox in the dining room.
Yes.
So that he would have some beach vibes so he could try to write, because he was just so blocked.
And I think that's the other interesting thing we got to go back to, just the parents. Not necessarily the mother of the Wilson sisters. I haven't really read anything that would indicate to me that there was any issue with her, other than the fact that she married a genius who was perhaps too much of a genius, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah. He definitely, I'm sure, had some issues along those lines. But, I hadn't read or come across anything bad about her at all. No,
and I don't think we ever will. And it's not even so much that we're saying, oh yeah, and it's not that he was abusive, and I do want to make that perfectly clear, especially considering who we're going to go to next. But Brian became a recluse, couldn't perform with the band, and that being the Beach Boys, just a band that I've been actually exploring a lot lately. And this was very early into their success. So by the mid-'60s, he was already a mess. Now, China would have been born, because she's 51, only a few years older than me. So the Wilsons, they weren't even born yet, because they're all around the same age. So they're born to a dad who they already know literally from birth as the weirdo who sometimes doesn't want to get out of bed.
Lying in bed, just like Brian Wilson did.
Well done. You beat me to that.
I had to listen to that one too while we were going through this.
So
you know that he actually performs that song?
No, does he? That's awesome.
He does. Yeah, he's got his own little version of it. He said he was a little offended at first, but then he actually was quite flattered.
I wonder if Yoko is offended by "Be My Yoko Ono."
I don't know. I don't know enough about Yoko Ono, but I doubt that she would really pay any attention to it.
Probably. So yeah, right from birth, the Wilsons had a dad who was strange. So I would assume, and I didn't find any interview corroborating that because everyone talks about their dad, but they don't talk about their mom, and they really should. I spent a bit of time going through the brief discography of her group, the Honeys, and the harmony was there. It was certainly a lot of Brian Wilson influence, obviously, but it wasn't that. I would imagine that she would have been teaching more about harmonies than he was. I don't know whether I'm right or wrong on that. I have no idea, but she's certainly more than capable.
I didn't really get anything about them having actual music instruction. It seemed to be just a lot that they just enjoyed singing and playing around with harmonies. Mm-hmm. So it could just be something that they were exposed to in their home, and then they just got very good at.
So then do we go to the train wreck that is John Phillips?
Oh, well, we have to go there eventually.
Well, we might as well take that detour to Crazy Town right now. Wait, Crazy Town? Butterfly? Callback.
Nice.
Thank you. John Phillips, the leader of the Mamas and the Papas, I guess the head papa. Mm-hmm. The guy with the chinchilla hat. Oh, yeah, please. I'm sort of aimless right now because he doesn't inspire any direction, this guy, to me.
Michelle Phillips was his second wife. He was married before, and China has an older half-sister named Mackenzie.
Oh, yes, Mackenzie Phillips. Yes. She's a part of my childhood. There yet.
John Phillips, absolute wild child, drug addict partier, apparently got his daughters into drugs. So there's, Mackenzie Phillips, after his death, released a tell-all. But I'm pretty sure that that's the reason that China was into drugs as a teenager was because of her dad. And Mackenzie said that he was injecting her with cocaine, and which seems weird to me. Who injects cocaine? But
among other things, he was injecting her with.
Well, not when she was a child, not when she was 11, but he was she was rolling joints and smoking joints and doing coke with him when she was a preteen, all through her teenage years, and then at 19, you can carry on with that.
Well, Mackenzie Phillips, I think I want to touch a bit more about her. She was in a show that I remember very much from my youth, One Day at a Time. And before that, she had a nice little role in George Lucas's other good film, American Graffiti. I won't go into too much of her role, but it was good enough where it certainly put her on the map and landed her what should have been a breakout role in that sitcom, especially when that sitcom took off. The only thing is she wasn't the breakout. And here's another callback. Valerie Bertinelli was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because, Valerie...
yeah, I did know that.
Yeah, and I have to imagine, and I don't know, I haven't read her biography. The only thing I know about her biography is when she did sort of the talk show circuit or the news circuit, and where it was sort of where she came out saying what John did to her. And it wasn't just the drugs, it was also their weird consent, starting off with rape and then became a 10-year consensual sexual affair with your dad?
Yeah, so what I read about that, and I read a few different things, and I read other family members' reactions to it, and China believes her. Mm-hmm. She says that Mackenzie actually told her at one point years before. And Michelle doesn't believe her, but then other ex-wives do, and other family members think that it's definitely possible. So she was 19. It seemed like they were doing a lot of drugs together. Like, he would go to her place, they would do a bunch of drugs. She said one day she blacked out, woke up, and they were having sex. And so therefore, I mean, she was blacked out, it was rape. Whether or not that's true we'll never know. I don't really want to know. And then it just seemed very strange to me that she allowed it, and, like, she said the first few times were rape, or and then she, I guess, kept doing drugs with him, so kept making really bad decisions. And then she got pregnant. So 10 years later, at 29, she got pregnant, didn't know he could have been the dad, so he paid for her to get an abortion, and that was the end of that.
Yeah.
It's fucked up on so many levels. Like, I just can't wrap my brain around this.
Well, who of us can? I don't know anyone who can possibly identify with this. Mackenzie, too, her career was over by 21, 22. I don't know how old she would have been, but she got fired from that show for her drug use.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it got so bad that they just couldn't use her anymore. And I wonder what was sort of like the mind fuck going on in her head. And I'm gonna be a little blunt here, and well, Mackenzie Phillips is not an attractive woman.
Not particularly.
She's not, but she could act. I thought and especially when I was watching, and I haven't watched it in a while, but from what I remember of watching those early episodes of One Day at a Time, her acting was very, very good, like in a key centerpiece. Now, about a year into that, Valerie Bertinelli just completely blossoms to every teenage boy's fantasies and every tween boy fantasy, myself included. And now you're upstage because everyone wants a lot more of this character. Does that mess with her head? I don't know. Again, I didn't read the book, but it has to.
Oh, I'm sure.
You know, especially if
and then also, so she's already got years of drug use at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure that when something like that happens, you fall back to these terrible habits and coping mechanisms drug use just spirals like that. It's not, you're upset with what's going on, so you do something to cope, and then it just makes things worse, and you react, and you do more drugs, and it's a cycle, and it's a downward spiral with a very, very hard bottom.
Sure. And then your half sister sort of breaks out, and at the time she was a knockout. She was an absolute gorgeous woman. That speaking of China Phillips. And I think as I sort of closed off last week when you said this is what we're going to do, and I said, oh yeah, I remembered this group as the hot one, the okay one, and the fat one.
What's kind of funny is Wendy, as she's aged, has gotten better looking.
I'd agree.
I think that, yeah, she kind of grew into her, I don't know, was it her cheekbones or her jawline, or I don't know, but she's actually quite an attractive middle-aged woman.
And for those wondering who are new listeners, like, who's this guy? He's so misogynistic. I bash on my own looks all the time, so get over it. I'm well aware of what I look.
Listeners.
Well, I'm just pointing out that I'm well aware of what I look like, which is an eh. And fine, but I'm okay with that. So
you are happily married to a wonderful woman. That's all you need.
Damn right on that. So 21, they're huge. China's on top of the world. They're all on top of the world. I was going back trying to find as many interviews as I could from that time period. I couldn't find that many. I do remember one that I couldn't find where they were on the Tonight Show with Leno.
Oh.
And I was I'm going by memory. I'm going by a 30-year-old memory. So if I'm off on this, I apologize. I couldn't corroborate it. But they brought out a picture from, I guess, the insert of the album back when there was kids when the albums had little inserts, you see, and you could put in other pictures. That was my attempt at being a really old man. No, didn't work? Okay.
I miss album inserts. Reading all the lyrics, looking at the pictures. Yeah.
So in one of them, they had a picture of them when I guess they would have been 3, and they were all sort of like arm in arm, and they weren't wearing it. They had no tops on. And so Jay says, so do you think maybe we can replicate this? And why this sticks with me, not because, the 18 or 19-year-old version of me wanted to see that, just because of the look on Carney's face. Which was either, I don't know whether it was, Jay, you're an asshole, or B, you don't mean me. I don't know. And because there's a woman, we haven't really talked about Carney too much. Carney did a lot more than the other two, which, who would have pegged that in 1990 in terms of the public eye? I sure as hell wouldn't have. But and Carney Wilson has struggled with her weight to this day.
Oh, sure. She, at one point before going on Dancing with the Stars, it was her on Dancing with the Stars, or was it China?
It was China.
And it was China. So just before China was going on Dancing with the Stars, Carney went in for weight loss surgery. And they were really mad at her because it was during one of their reunion tours, and they had to cancel a couple of shows because of it.
Well, she did her gastric bypass surgery, and I guess in the early days of the internet, put it online where you could watch it. I don't know.
Did she really?
Yeah, she did.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't know why anyone would do that. So, so here we have a woman who knows that she's got weight problems. I guess if you got weight problems, you can't really hide it. But she was sure as hell open about it.
She struggled with her weight, yeah. But putting that online is weird.
Well, it's very weird. It was like that Oprah moment where she came out in the thin jeans, and then like 6 months later, it's a good thing she didn't give away her fat clothes, Carney's sort of been up and down. I forgot that she posed in Playboy.
Did she?
She did.
Oh, I missed that one too.
Well, so 25 years after she posed in Playboy, I finally I saw it. Because, yeah,
interesting.
I looked that up. I wasn't going to try and find footage of her gastric bypass surgery. And yeah, either way, it was an interesting thing to do, I think. But I know she's had the gastric bypass surgery, she's had the lap band surgery, and she was the one in the mid-'90s who had the talk show. Didn't last long, but, she's got that, and I think non-Canadians won't know what I mean by this. She's got a Jan Arden vibe to me. Like,
yeah, she does. She has a similar look.
Yeah. The only difference is when Carney says, I don't give a shit, she's lying, and when Jan says it, I believe her.
Well, Jan Arden doesn't have to give a shit. Because if you're Canadian, you know just how big of a star and personality she is.
No, very true. Well, I believe did Insensitive do very well in the States? I think she did break through in the States with that.
I'm pretty sure that she's made the charts in the States.
Okay, I'm pretty sure she did too.
She can stage a show anywhere in Canada in any venue and it will sell out. I've seen her with the Vancouver Symphony. I've seen her in a little intimate... Wasn't she in Jasper at one point?
I believe so.
Didn't she do the pajama party?
I believe so, yeah.
So she draws a crowd no matter where she goes. So she'll sell out opera houses and major theaters, but she also does like little things, and she's just super talented. And like after Anne Murray, she's a national treasure.
She is. She's also one of those types of people. If you see her in an interview, you just like, oh shit, I want to go to the bar with her and just shoot the shit. And Carney's got a bit of that vibe to her. Mm-hmm. And I think if you catch her on the right day, though, I think she could also go very woe is me. As for Wendy, I knew nothing about her 30 years ago, and I still know nothing about her. I can't find anything.
She just seems to kind of hang on the coattails. You know, I was thinking about this, and I was like, it didn't matter that they tanked after one album because they would have so much fucking money from their parents anyways that it's not like they needed to do anything. They could just be spoiled rich kids.
Well, yeah, that's it exactly. I think they wrote their material too, so they had that money. So they made their own money. I was going to
say, plus they would have a ton of residuals from the rights to the couple of very great songs. Still popular. Hold On is still popular to this day. Release Me? Yeah. It's reasonably, if it comes on the radio, I know it. The other ones that were in the top 4 or 5, there were 4 or 5 of them that were in the top 5.
Well, they had a third number 1 hit too. I forget what that is.
Yeah.
Obviously not.
And then there were a couple that were like at number 3 and 4 or 4 and 5 or something like that. So they did well. They did very well. They did well, and they still, when they tour now, they still get fans coming out. And you want to talk about Bridesmaids?
Yeah.
You and I both watched it.
This
week.
Yeah, because when you said that's what we're going to do, and I can't remember if I said that on air or after that I'm going to watch Bridesmaids again, because for those who haven't seen it, the 2 main characters were fans of Wilson Phillips growing up, and I guess those characters must have been rich at the end because somehow they got them to play.
It's the rich bridesmaid that arranged to have Wilson Phillips play at the end.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I didn't.
So apparently they got asked to do the movie, but weren't told at all what the story was or anything else. And then they come out and it's a stage setup, and they see Maya Rudolph and what's her name?
Kristen Wiig.
Kristen Wiig, and they're like, oh, okay, so obviously it's a comedy. And then they literally spend hours, like into the wee hours of the morning, just playing the song over and over to get the right shots. And they said it was a huge amount of fun. And it was only then afterwards when they watched the movie that they got the whole, like they actually realized what was going on. But that gave them a huge bump in popularity. That, the song was always, it comes on the radio and people sing along, but it suddenly brought it to the forefront because Bridesmaids was a fucking huge movie. And
as it should have been.
Apparently the reason that they got Wilson Phillips, it wasn't part of the plot line. They just fed it into the plot line, but they just took a poll of people and about what their favorite like wedding songs were, and that one won.
Hold On is a good wedding song?
Apparently. I'm like, I don't recall that really being a popular wedding anthem. Like, there's a lot of others. We're not talking the chicken dance, like, or the cha-cha slide. But anyways, apparently this was a poll, and I'm guessing that there were just a lot of, like, 30-ish-year-old females on the set.
Well, I guess, and that's kind of why I asked how we opened up. Like, was that something that a very young Andrea Tessman really got into? Was that like a big band for you? Like one of your first bands that you cared about?
I didn't care so much about them, but I really liked the song, and I liked some of the other stuff. I was definitely more at the time into Paula Abdul. Because, I take one step forward and you take 2 steps back.
We're going to cover her.
And that video has an animated wolf in it, so...
Yeah, because like that's some... We're definitely going to cover that at one point because that did go number 1. So like the relationship between Paula Abdul and the sexual tension between her and a cartoon cat... has to be wolf, whatever. Oh, that's better.
Wolf? I think it's a wolf. It might be a cat. Now I can't remember. I had considered bringing that one up before also. So, but then I was like,
there's a lot. There's a lot we can do with her.
Separate my 90s stuff. There's a lot I like in the 90s.
well done. And Paula Abdul is the gift that keeps on giving.
Right?
And yes, we're definitely going to tackle that one. I want to go back to China, if I could.
Okay.
So going back and doing the research, I remembered that she was married to one of the Baldwins, Billy Baldwin, who, and I remember like in college having a couple female friends who just thought he was the absolute bomb. Is that what they called it back then? Sure. I don't remember how they called it, but they just thought he was the be all and end all. And I thought, oh, that's it. And I remembered that they got married. I did not know that they were still together.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. Because you don't expect that in a Hollywood marriage, especially from, well, the Baldwins are a mess. And they still are. I actually just learned about how Stephen Baldwin's upset who's a hyper Republican now, and is upset with Alec's portrayal of Trump. So that was interesting. I learned about that today. I didn't know that.
Oh, that's funny.
Isn't it?
Alec, I wouldn't assume that any of them would be hardcore Republicans just because Alec is so into making fun of them.
Well,
even before his Trump, his Trump is brilliant. I gotta give him props for that. But even before, like, he plays the straight-laced kind of right-wing character very well, but very much in a Colbert Report style.
Mm-hmm. Of course, I think if you're a celebrity and you're a Republican, your career is pretty much over anyway. The only exception to that rule is Clint Eastwood, who is in his late 80s, does whatever the hell he wants, and he does it great.
But when was the last time you saw Stephen Baldwin in anything?
Today in an article.
I remember his name. Just now when I was like, okay, there's Billy and there's Alec, and who's the other dude? So
I want to say Daniel. And I'm not even sure that that's right.
But, like, Stephen Baldwin hasn't been in anything of note in a very long time.
Got to be over 20 years. And, like, he was... What was he in? One of my favorite films, The Usual Suspects.
Mm-hmm. That is the timeless movie.
It is. He's in a few other things, but he always sort of looked like a goof. But anyway, I'm going. This
back
is not
to
where.
China.
Yeah, back to China. So, one of the interviews, I think, right before we went on, we both said that we kind of watched it. It was a recent interview with Kelly Clarkson. I didn't even know she had her own show. And on that show, it was sort of interesting how Kelly sort of admitted that she was kind of stupid in the fact, and you're self-deprecating. I shouldn't say
she
stupid.
She didn't know who their parents were?
Well, yeah.
She is young, though. What is she? She's only like 30 now? Like, she would have been not even born when this shit came out.
Okay. I'm going to look this up as we're going through this, but I bet you she's closer to 40. And I'm not talking about her waist size. But
Hey, she also has struggled with her weight her whole life. So
38.
She's 38?
Yeah, 38.
I thought she was younger.
Well,
no, yeah, she totally should have known this.
Well, but not only that, it's like I'm going to sort of like sidestep here on Kelly Clarkson. Okay, yeah, I took a shot there. I think Kelly is awesome, and I'm as much as I hate musicals, I actually liked From Justin to Kelly.
I have not seen it.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's terrible. And again, I hate musicals, but Kelly Clarkson, at that time, when you wanted to paint the all-American girl, she really was.
Oh yeah.
But,
no, and I have a lot of respect for her because A, she's probably the only American Idol that is still relevant.
Carrie Underwood.
Oh yeah. Okay. So there's two. In what? 15 years? Like 20 years?
I'd say so.
How long has this been going on? And also, she kind of, like, she really tried to fit the Hollywood, starlet model look. And then she just went, fuck it. I am who I am. I'm going to be as healthy as I can be and not try for a figure that doesn't actually come naturally to me. So I got to give her respect for that.
I give her mad props.
She's got a killer voice.
You know what? She's like one of those people who says, you know what? I'm a mom and I got some chops.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what she wanted to be. But the reason I sort of brought up also how Kelly didn't know that, it made me think, holy crap, I guarantee you there's a pile of teens watching her on The Voice who have no idea that she became a star on American Idol.
Yeah, I believe that.
But on that interview, and it was a throwaway thing, I wasn't even planning to go down there. China mentioned that she had a YouTube channel, so I spent today listening to it.
How'd that go?
Not well. No, I did not enjoy it, but I couldn't. I was bored, and then she'd say something like, "What the? Did she just say that?" And then I'd go back to it, and all right. So the gist of it, China's a Jesus freak now.
Oh, like Kirk Cameron style?
I'd say on the way there, and
Nice.
I think it sort of ties in with the fact, and I don't want to paint all former addicts in the same brush, but usually addicts go from one thing to another, which kind of makes me wonder if China was doing some other stuff after. Like I wonder if she's sort of had more drug problem. And I don't know this. I have no idea whether she's been dabbling a bit of the nose candy in the 2000s, 2010s. But it's sort of a weird thing to be a born-again Christian and start this in your early 50s. That's not typical. Unless you need a new thing to latch on.
Let's circle back to Sinead O'Connor, who became Muslim in her late 40s.
Well, yeah.
People do all sorts of weird shit in their life at various times for various reasons, including finding all sorts of different religions. Some legitimate, some whack job.
Okay, but Sinead admittedly has mental issues.
Oh yeah, she's. I just saw she's checking herself into a mental facility now.
I did see that. Yeah, I saw that. So I go back to China, and again, I don't want to. I don't know whether she had other addictions, but it does sort of fit a pattern. In the last video that I just watched, literally, because I just thought I just listened to another one while I was sort of working, waiting for us to sort of connect. And she recorded it like 2 days ago. And the way she records things, it's very meat and potatoes. And like at first, like I'm going to say the positive stuff too. She does it, without makeup. She's just walking around like there's no production, just walking around in the neighborhood. And she's talking about things that happened to her. She talked about how she was raped. Didn't know that. That never came up. And how she was groomed, and then talked about her brother, her half-brother, that I didn't know existed.
I didn't know she had a half-brother.
Yeah, so she talked about the relationship that person had with her dad, and other stuff. Also, Michelle's in a couple of the videos, too. And Michelle, I'll give her mad props. She's a much older woman now. She's just said, screw it, I'm old and I don't give a shit.
She also was in the audience for the Kelly Clarkson interview.
Oh, did they show her?
Yep.
Okay, I guess I missed that part. But anyway, so she was doing her Jesus stuff. Like, so she's walking with her dog, and you and I as dog owners can sort of respect that, right? So she's walking with her dog, and then sometimes the dog will go say hello to people because dogs will do that. And then so she'll have an interaction with somebody in the middle of discussing past trauma. And then as she says goodbye to that person, and Jesus be with you, or however it is, like, or peace be with Jesus. I don't know. Anyway, the last one I was watching, she uploaded 2 days ago, so this is pretty damn fresh. Where she opens up hoping that William will be saved.
William? Who's William?
Her husband.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe she called him Billy. I forget. But
but I'm sorry, I was thinking Billy. But yeah, okay, William.
So, yeah. And how right now, her husband said to, not on camera, not on this, but, you're not the same person that I married. And then she said, rightfully so, well, duh, I'm 52 now, and I was 25 when we got married, or whatever it was. But she says, like, he's having a hard time that I put Jesus first. And it's like, what the hell is going on here? And I'm not trying to knock on people who think that way. You and I have a mutual friend who is very religious.
Very religious.
Yeah.
And found religion in her 30s.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also, she faced a lot of trauma
Sure.
and shit in her life, and that gives her comfort. So good on her.
I know, and absolutely, and all the time that I hung out, I don't know if it was the same experience for you, but she never brought it up unless it sort of came up organically. Never tried to convert me. Never.
And I didn't know anything about it until like after we actually got closer.
Mm-hmm.
Because when it was, bigger social circles and whatnot, it was never brought up. And yeah, it was only when we started actually talking about our youth and things like that, because I'm the opposite. I was brought up Catholic and have since kind of left the church because I have issues about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas she was not brought up religious and then found the church. So
right. But does not.
But even at that, she was very willing to accept my opinions and my thoughts as long as what I said didn't. Like, I never said anything to demean her opinions and thoughts. We just had differing thoughts.
Yeah, and that was the same for me. I'm open about the fact that I'm an atheist. And she never once said, well, you know what? Sit down and read scripture with me. And that's probably why we got along so well. Because
when someone says that to me, I start to preach about the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster and how I've been touched by his noodly appendage. And they don't tend to like that.
Right. So I guess where I'm going with this, so this seems like this is very fresh for China. I don't know that that's the case, but she's very raw in these videos, like bearing everything, which can either be very entertaining, very strange, or sometimes very boring. Which is fine too. I'm not all that interesting too sometimes, but I'll leave, I guess, with this thought. I can't say that I'm a bigger fan than I was before. I can say that their success came a lot more naturally than I initially thought.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes any sense.
No, I realized that too, because, not when it came out, because at 9 years old I had no concept of how things like this worked. But, they weren't Miley Cyrus. They weren't manufactured by the machine that churns out pop stars. Just because they had talent and were the children of a star. They actually did some work and put out a quality product.
Yeah, they're three people who had an opportunity, and their opportunity came easy than most. Did their thing, and yet here we have, and I can't say that for Wendy because I learned nothing about her. She's probably the only one who was happy. But it taught me again the one thing that I had to learn much later in life. The only currency I give a shit is happiness. And I sure as hell seem to be happier than two of them. It's not that even those two are necessarily miserable. I don't get that at all. But
well, and I think that I'm sure that the lack of success of their subsequent albums, it seemed to me that they put out this first album. It was a massive success, and then the record label just pushed them to put out another album quickly, So maybe the songs weren't as thought through. And then also they totally changed their image from like West Coast wearing denim kind of easygoing girls to overly made up early 90s, big hair, dark makeup, corsets. Like they went from being these like approachable girls to being these almost middle-aged looking women that had a totally different vibe. They were trying for sexy that just didn't work, and didn't fit with the music. And I think that had a lot to do with the failure of that album. And they, at the same time, they didn't need the money. I think it was a passion project, which is why China walked away, basically. I read an article from 2002 about, the downfall of Wilson Phillips, and it basically said, I don't know if it was China or Carney, but one of them was like, yeah, well, whatever. When this stops being fun, I'm just going to fuck off and do voiceover work. Like, it mattered to them that they were having fun and enjoying what they were doing, but they weren't going to push it. They weren't going to, they weren't desperate for anything. They had money, they had fame, and they will forever have money because their parents would be fucking loaded unless they were dumb and sold the rights to the music.
I got to look that up, see if John Phillips did that, because that does sound like something he would do.
I know that he put that psychiatrist as a writer credit on some of his songs.
Well, we're talking about Brian Wilson, but yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Brian Wilson put what's his name
Brian did that, yeah,
as a writer credit. But, I don't know about John Phillips. I don't know that selling off his... Yeah, I don't know.
I'll sell my music, man, but not the hat. That hat stays with me forever, man.
Although, the Beatles sold off a lot of their rights, too, so...
Yeah, there's still Paul McCartney is still struggling to get a lot of that back. He still to this day doesn't have all of it. How strange is that? I think that's also why
the fact that Michael Jackson owned the rights to most of the Beatles catalog is just fucking weird.
And that it was Paul's idea. Paul gave him the idea. Like, Jesus. That's the other thing I can't figure out. Like, how did Michael swoop in and sort of take all that away? But I guess that's what happens when you're young, and I think that's why it drove me nuts when Taylor Swift was. I know I'm going in a totally different tangent, but whatever. If that's what I do. When Taylor was having her feud with her former manager, Scooter Braun. You're in your 30s and your name's Scooter. You got other issues, but. And so she was saying like, oh, it's a bit a part of the whole this patriarchy, blah blah. No, shut the hell up, Taylor Swift. Ever since the music industry started, managers have been figuring out a way to screw over talent. And you're not Paul McCartney, and you're awesome, and you're awesome in your talent. I don't really care for her as a person, but I think she's an incredible talent, and no one can take that away from you. But she is not at the level of McCartney, and McCartney got screwed over.
Yeah.
Don't call it
the one that I feel, the young pop star that I feel for in that sense is not her, but it's actually Kesha. But that's more because there's all sorts of issues with sexual...
Yes. We're going to touch on that one at some point.
Oh, yeah. Because she had some number one hits,
yes,
too.
She did. So
anyway.
It's my turn to pick for next week. I was actually going to.
We've gone way off tangent.
Yeah, well, that's what I always do. Well, yeah, that's what you're supposed to rein me in, but you figured out. Let's see where Buchner goes.
I've been drinking some gin, so.
Oh, have you? Sipping on some gin and juice. Wait a minute.
Just a little.
I'm the sober one? That doesn't happen.
Well, I was sober when we started this. But I have 2 drinks now. So, nice. Okay, what are we doing next week?
All right, I was going to do something very recent, And then I wore something from the early 60s that predates the Beatles. And those two, and those ones, I still thought, will probably still happen. But then I had a eureka moment. And remember I mentioned Eric Stoltz. Eric Stoltz was cast in a movie and then got fired fired before, like during filming. That was Back to the Future.
Really?
Oh, you didn't know that?
No, I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. We'll go here first. Yeah, they wanted Michael J. Fox originally, but Family Ties. Do you ever watch that show?
Of course.
Okay. All right. So Family Ties. So he couldn't get Family Ties. I guess NBC or the Paramount, whoever it was, wouldn't let Michael J. Fox go out to do it. And so
another Canadian treasure, by the way.
Yes.
Let's just get that out there.
Yes, absolutely. So, anyways, they couldn't get Fox, and then they filmed almost everything. And then at the end, Robert Zemeckis, the director, just said, like, this just isn't working. Eric Stoltz has no comedic timing. And he's a fantastic actor. Still is. But he's got just because you can act doesn't mean you can tell a joke.
True.
And just to sort of like give an example of that, I saw an interview that the guy who played Biff, actually you want to hear someone who's like super funny and you'd never know it, Tom F. Wilson. That interviews with him are always a treat. The guy who plays Biff is one of the funniest guys I've ever heard.
Really?
Yeah.
I would never guessed that.
Oh, yeah. I remember him on The Tonight Show. He did a comedy bit with a tuba.
Yeah. Now I might have to go dig that up.
Yeah. So
I'm intrigued.
So Tom Wilson, at this point, this was his biggest breakout, I guess, and he never really eclipsed that again. But whatever, he's still working today, I think. He gets called in, and they won't tell him what it is, so he thinks he's getting fired. And it turns out he's not getting fired. We have to recast everything, or we have to reshoot everything because we let Eric go. And then in one of the stories that he told, like when they were doing like a read around, Stoltz said, you know, like I just don't see how I feel really bad for everyone at the end. Like, and they said, like, what do you mean? Well, I mean, they all have a different history now, and it's kind of sad.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, but and then Tom Wilson says, like, well, yeah, I guess that's true, but maybe that's not something you bring up. And then Leah Thompson had a different perspective on that whole thing. She said, like, yeah, I mean, like he kept acting like he was De Niro, except when he was hitting on me.
Yeah.
But going back to this, where I'm sort of going with this, there is a point to this story. Family Ties did let him do it, and during the course of a Family Ties episode, they played the song during the love arc with Michael J. Fox, Alex P. Keaton, who, by the way, would be canceled now as a Republican. I thought that was a good joke. No? Okay, fine, whatever. Give me a pity laugh, Andrea. It's all right. In the story arc, the first time he makes out with I forget the character's name, but the woman who would become his wife, Tracy Pollan, was the backdrop of a song they picked by Billy Vera and the Beaters. It was a song from 1981 that they placed just for that they added to this sitcom, and then everyone called to learn more about this song. We're going to look at the lone hit of Billy Vera and the Beaters in a tribute to Michael J. Fox, who announced his retirement from acting a week ago.
Yeah, he also just released a book, right?
I didn't know that. Did he? Okay.
I think he just released a book, but I could be wrong. But anyways, announced his retirement. Sad, but understandable for a man who's been living with Parkinson's for 10 years? 15 years?
You know what, though, Andrea?
A long time.
I think I'm going to go now. Now I might just call an audible, because I just pretty much told that whole story of that whole song. So why would we cover this? There you go. That's what happened. They took a club guy from San Diego, and screw it. I'm going to go to 1963. That's not what I plan to do.
Oh, we're changing it up. After
changing it
that
up.
whole thing.
I just told the
we
story.
went really into Family Ties and Michael J. Fox and Back to the Future. And now we're going back. Now we're going back to the future to 1963.
Oh, well done. Yeah, we're going back to 1963, and I wanted to touch this one since we came up with this idea. We're going with the strangest hit of all time. 3 weeks before the Beatles, Dominique by the Singing Nun. That's what we're doing.
Is that the Dominique?
Yep.
Oh,
that is what we're doing.
I don't know what I think about this, but I am looking forward to finding out. Yeah,
I've done some research on this one, which I will not actually share right now since I've already blown what I was going to do by going on a Family Ties tangent. Well done, Buchner. Jesus Christ.
You weren't even drunk this time.
No, not this time. Yeah.
All right. So, the Singing Nun, Dominique.
Yes, the Singing Nun, Dominique. It's. I will say this: it's a tragic story.
Okay.
And for anyone,
I only know that one little bit. So
yeah, and for anyone thinking, well, okay, like that's a funny name for a band. No, this was an actual singing nun.
Mm-hmm. It was. I know that much.
This is
all right.
So screwed up.
I'm looking forward to next Tuesday.
And this will probably be the only time where Alex Keaton and the Singing Nun got morphed into a tangent.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. You stay safe.
You too, Kirk.
Thank you all so much for listening. Look for a lot more content from us at NotInHallOfFame.com, and we hope everyone out there is staying safe.